Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nayna Gupta. I'm the Associate Director of Policy at the National Immigrant Justice Center, where we provide legal representation and advocacy on behalf of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Grateful to all of you for joining us today as we echo the growing international call to bring home those unjustly deported under prior U.S. administrations. We are here today to listen to deported individuals and their loved ones as a reminder of the urgency of this call. Today's event will be recorded, and the key resources mentioned through our presentation will be available in the chat and in follow-up email. We will speak to you as a panel for about 25 minutes and then allow 20 minutes to answer questions, which we encourage you to put into the chat throughout our presentation today. Just yesterday evening, in speaking with U.S. veteran Howard Bailey, who you will hear from shortly, even after months of working on this proposal that we are releasing today, I was moved to tears as I listened to him simultaneously describe the unrelenting trauma and pain the U.S. immigration system has imposed on him and his family, but also conveying his deep pride for his country, USA. It reminded me of all the work that we have left to do. For decades, as most of us know, the US immigration system has deported hundreds of thousands of individuals, permanently separating them from loved ones and destabilizing communities. But in some cases, like that of Connaught Lawrence, people were deported despite having strong legal grounds to remain. In other instances, like that of Jean Montreville, the US government has repeatedly abused its considerable discretion to decide whether and when to order deportation. Despite these unjust deportations, the current mechanisms offered under the law to return unjustly deported individuals rarely work. They offer a false promise. The proposal that we're offering today, which you can catch on the link here on your screen, does not require approval from Congress or changes to the law. It takes the wide discretion the administration already has and puts it to use through a centralized and more effective process to meaningfully return deported individuals home. The US government has exercised its power to enforce US civil immigration laws aggressively, just as we're seeing criminal prosecution offices around the country right now developing units to review unjust prosecutorial decisions within their own offices. It is only logical that the US government create an internal mechanism to review unjust deportations. But who are the unjustly deported? They include thousands of US veterans who offered public service to their country to find themselves exiled to another. It includes young adults who should have been eligible for protection under Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, but who were deported to countries they have never known, while the Trump administration and courts battled over the future of the program. It includes those who, despite decades of residency and livelihood in the US, were deported due to contact with the US criminal legal system, a system that we know disproportionately targets and discriminates against Black and brown people. And it includes those who were eligible for lawful status, but were deported before they could finish the process of availing themselves of those options. Through our proposal, we are asking the Biden administration to create an office within the Department of Homeland Security to efficiently and compassionately review applications for those who hope to return. The office would be independent and separate from ICE, rather than ask immigration courts or DHS attorneys to reopen and rescind a prior final order of removal. Deported individuals would submit applications directly to this office, which would then consider each using a set of factors that reflect the overwhelming challenges faced by deported individuals and their families. The office would be empowered to review final orders of removal and stipulate to relief so that those returned will have status when they're back in the US. The office would also be tasked with facilitating the actual physical return of an individual. This process that we've outlined will ensure fairness and consistency, reduce the burden on immigration courts, and orient DHS toward bringing home a larger number of unjustly deported individuals. The paper and executive summary is available online in the link in front of you. But most importantly, it shares the story of 10 deported individuals, including Howard, Jean Montreville, and Connaught Lawrence. I would now like to introduce U.S. veteran Howard Bailey, who's here live on the line from Jamaica with us, but who graciously recorded his story and his words yesterday evening to share with all of you. He was deported 15 years after receiving a single possession of marijuana conviction and after having served in the U.S. Navy. We will now hear his video. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Howard Bailey. I am a honorable discharged veteran of the United States Navy. I served in both Operation Desert Storm and Providing Comfort. I joined the military right after high school to serve my country. I have now been living in exile for 8 years, 10 if I include the 2 I spent in immigration jail fighting my case. Before I was deported to Jamaica, a country I have not seen in 25 years, I was a happily married man with 2 American kids, a home I purchased with my VA loan, owned my own trucking business with 4 employees, and paid my taxes. In my mind, I was living the American dream. The last time I saw my home was in June, 10 years ago, and since then, life feels like a total nightmare. Every day I hope and pray I will make it. I will wake up and I'll be back home in Virginia again. In 1995, about 6 months after I got out of the military, I was charged with possession of marijuana. I was 22 years old at the time. It was my first time ever being arrested. I didn't know that I had marijuana being delivered to me in a package. I told the cops and they said not to worry. But I still had to go to court. My lawyer told me this is just a slap on the wrist. We're just going to plead guilty. Being young and naive, I listened. 25 years later now, I'm still paying. In 2010, 15 years after I was arrested for the marijuana thing, I surrounded my home and came to take me away because I was too honest. You see, I applied for U.S. citizenship, and when the application asked me if I ever been convicted of a crime, I answered yes. I even went to the courthouse to get the paperwork to show that the case actually happened, since USCIS couldn't find any record of it. Then one day, I was home. Actually one morning, and I heard a knock on my door about 5:30 in the morning. When I answered, I saw all these guys in khaki suit and a state trooper. I got scared. I had no idea what was happening. I thought one of my truck might have been in an accident or something. Then I realized it was ICE. They told me they were taking me away because of my marijuana conviction that I reported, even though it was so many years ago. They grabbed me and didn't care that my 11-year-old daughter at the time came out screaming and crying. My wife pleaded and begged. Just begged them not to let them take me without not putting on a pants or something, since I was only dressed in my pajamas and a tank top. I haven't seen my home. I haven't seen my daughter in 10 years. My deportation traumatized her. Her mental health suffered all through her teenage years. She didn't make it to college. Her dreams and mine. It ripped my heart that my daughter was hungry at times and I couldn't do nothing, nothing at all. That's my worst nightmare. My son has had trouble with the criminal legal system. I blame myself. I wasn't there when he needed me the most. We were very close. Young men in America need their father. He had just turned 14 when I was dragged away. I'm sorry. As I sit here every day, it has been extremely hard. And it's not just hard on me. It's hard on my entire family. Before my deportation, I fought my case for 2 years from Immigration Detention Center. And it was hard, man. I was moved from one detention center to another, starting in Hampton Roads, York, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Louisiana, New Mexico, and so forth. After I was deported, I got a pardon from the governor of Virginia for the marijuana charge, but I still couldn't come home. The governor told me that his hands are tied and he can't make ICE do nothing. Many people have tried to help me, even the senator from West Virginia, but I still won't budge. Once again, my name is Howard Bailey, one of the many veterans in exile. I love my country, and I just want us to come home. Thank you for listening today. Go Navy!
Thank you so much, Howard, for sharing your words and story with us by video. And we will make sure that in the recording of this event, that the video, can be seen clearly and easily by all that watch. And Howard will be with us for questions at the end of the event today. I'm super honored to present our next speaker, Alina Das, who is the director of the Immigrant Rights Clinic at the New York University Law School. Alina.
Thank you so much, Nayna and NIJC, Lynn of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance, and everyone who has worked so incredibly hard to elevate this important issue. And I have to say, listening to you, Howard, and the incredible life that you've lived and the horrible things that our government has done to you, thank you so much for continuing to fight. Your resiliency and what you've given to this country is inspiring for all of us. And I think it's what motivates us to support this initiative to really identify a path, a way for you to finally come home. So as Nayna mentioned, my name is Alina Das. I am a professor at NYU Law School and co-director of the Immigrant Rights Clinic. And this report comes at a time where we've just recently marked the 25-year anniversary of the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, the first of two devastating laws that were passed under the Clinton administration in 1996 that transformed the immigration system and are part of the reason why we have so many heartbreaking stories like the one that you all just heard. Over the last 25 years, we've seen the deportation system expand dramatically. And there have been safety valves that were in place, but many of them have disappeared as a result of this expansion. At the same time, we've seen, particularly under the past administration, the deportation system being politicized and really weaponized against our immigrant communities. So the proposals that you will be hearing more about today and that you can read in more detail in our report really stem from a recognition that despite all of these changes, despite the oppressive laws that govern the immigration system, the Department of Homeland Security still retains vast authority, even under existing laws, to right these wrongs. One of those powers is the power of humanitarian parole. It can be used to bring people home right now, and it can be used as a tool that is centralized within the Department of Homeland Security. This government right now could bring Howard home through humanitarian parole. And so we do ask as part of this policy proposal that while the administration sets up a centralized process to accept applications, to consider cases carefully, that it use humanitarian parole to bring people home right away. I have to say, in addition to being a professor, I also have the privilege of representing immigrants who have faced deportation. In a few minutes, you will hear the story of one of my clients, Gene Montreville. He's a man who I've known for more than a decade, whose organizing and faith has inspired my own work. And yet he was punished under the Trump administration for speaking out and deported to Haiti, all based on drug convictions that he received 30 years ago. When you hear from him, I ask you to remember that DHS has the power to bring Gene home today. Through the exercise of humanitarian parole and deferred action, the Department of Homeland Security can bring Gene back to his family, to his 4 U.S. citizen children, and through the motion to reopen process can ensure his right to lawful permanent residency is restored once again. And people like Howard and Gene are not alone. Claudio Rojas, one of my other clients who's profiled in this paper, has suffered a similar fate. In 2012, he was part of an extraordinary campaign to transform the detention system. He organized from detention and he made national headlines because of his advocacy. But in 2019, when a documentary film called The Infiltrators was released at Sundance Film Festival, the Trump administration decided to arrest Claudio and deport him to Argentina, a country he hadn't seen in 2 decades, separating him from his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. If the experience of the last 4 years has really taught us anything, it's that the oppression of the system has been carefully institutionalized in the law. And this requires us, at minimum, to create mechanisms that can tip the scales of justice back in favor of these families, in favor of those who have fought so hard for our country, who should be celebrated for the contributions that they've made, and who deserve to be in their homes with their families. So we urge DHS not to wait and to make these families whole, and in the process to ensure justice for all of the families and communities that have been harmed. Gene Montreville arrived in the U.S. as a lawful permanent resident in 1986 at 17 years old. As a young man, he incurred drug convictions at the height of the war on drugs. While incarcerated, he was order removed in an unfair immigration hearing without a lawyer or the chance to present witnesses. Gene was released from prison in 2000. He returned to his community, raised his kids, and ran a small business. In 2005, ICE detained Gene, but released him with permission to remain in the country later that year. His experience in detention turned Gene into an immigrant rights activist. In this video, Gene talks about his decision to become an activist and how, in 2018, his activism led immigration officials under the Trump administration to deport him to Haiti.
My name is Gene Montreville. I'm an immigrant from Haiti. When I spent the 6 months in detention, I realized how many people that was being affected by immigration policies, people that were being deported, people that was there for like 40, 50 years and getting deported. So when I came home, when ICE released me on supervision, I decided to join an organization that was defending immigrant rights. I started going to churches, spread the words out. I did that for a few years, and I started to watch me while I was doing interviews and going to places. When Trump got into office, everybody got scared. I still continued doing my activism and going to churches, doing interviews, and spread the word. After I did 14 years on supervision, they never came to my house. But in 2018, they finally came and deported me to Haiti. And this is where I'm at now. I'm in Haiti. I've been here for 3 years now. I miss my family. I miss my kids. I have 4 U.S. citizen children that I'm very, very, very attached to. And the reasons for that, because I grew up without a father, and I never wanted my kids to grow up without a father. You know, I talk to them almost every day on the phone, but that's not enough. They need me. When you deport someone, who wins and who loses? You know, I spent all my life in America building a life for my kids. And when I got deported, yes, it hurts me, but it hurts my kids the most I have done everything possible to show my rehabilitation. And then you decided to deport me because I was speaking against the government. That is sad for America. United States is much better than that. If we can find a way to help some of us who were targeted by the Trump policies and get a chance to reunite with our families, that's all I want. Reunited back with my kids. We have to change the policies because there are too many lives that's being destroyed. Family unity is one of the most human rights that no government should violate. With that, I just want to say thank you for listening to me. Hopefully, I will see you guys one day. Hopefully, we can make a change.
Thank you so much, Alina, for your leadership in this work and for sharing with us Jean's words and story. Next, I'm also incredibly honored to present Lynn Tremonti, who is a fearless leader and advocate in this work. She is the director of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance, where she has been echoing the call to reunite families through a process like this for many years now. Lynn, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to just say thank you to Howard and Jean. If you've never had to bear some of the most painful experiences of your life in public, you will not understand how brave it is that they continue to speak up. And I hope that if you are coming to this policy question with a lot of questions about whether it's possible or not, I hope you realize that deportation is an extreme consequence for a paperwork violation. And I hope that you can not just sit with the shame that we should all feel as US Americans that this country has done this to our families, but also be motivated to act, because return after deportation is not only possible, it's necessary. I'm Lynne Tremonti. I'm the director of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. And we've been working with many people deported since the Bush administration, but particularly over the Obama years and then under Trump, who want to come home. Like Howard, they have children here, spouses, people who were not doing so well with their absence. Many people lost their original cases because they didn't have a lawyer, or because the immigration court system is rigged and biased against basically anybody who's not white, Christian, and financially well off. So, you know, people don't lose these cases because they're not in danger of being, if they're sent back. People lose their cases because the system doesn't work. We had people who've lived here for 2 decades who were then deported under Trump back to, for example, Mauritania, immediately arrested and tortured in jail there. They have no IDs there. Mauritania does not consider them to be citizens. And then they were able to escape jail only after having their families pay a bribe and get out to another country. Isasau in the NIJC report is one of those. We're also going to put in the chat for you some recordings, audio recordings of other people from Mauritania who made Ohio their home for 2 decades and then were summarily deported and arrested in Mauritania. One of these men is a friend of mine. I'm going to call him Ismaila. That's not his name. But I want to highlight his case in particular because he's not a father. He did not have the opportunity, or, you know, his own volition, or for whatever reason, he didn't get married or have a kid here. But his life still matters. His community still misses him. His brother wants him back in Columbus. He has a mosque and folks there who think about him. He's a good man. So when I talk about return after deportation and reunite US, of course, I think about people who have young children here, but I also think about people like Ismaila. And I want to make sure that the Biden administration understands that individuals are not, their value of their lives is not based on their family relationships or things like that. It's on, you know, just their humanity. we need return after deportation. So you can hear from Ms. Mela in the recordings. We have more at ohioimmigrant.org. And the last thing I want to leave you with is, so you've heard a lot about the pain of deportation. We've been not only hearing about that today, but for several years now. We know that it's painful, it's a grief, it's akin in some ways to a death in the family in terms of the stages of grief that you go through. So take for a moment the opportunity to reunite a family or to bring somebody back to this country. Think about that scene at the airport. Think about that scene when they walk into their home, their mosque, their church, their workplace, the soccer field, wherever they are being welcomed home. Just how beautiful that will be. And there are tools in the law today that the Biden administration can use to make those beautiful moments happen. It would be great if Congress passed immigration reform that brought everybody back. But in the meantime, there's so many things that they could do to let people like Howard and Jean, Isa, Ismaila come home. So let's work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing Ismail's story and your experience as an advocate and leader in this work. As we've said already today, the proposal that we're offering is something that the administration can do right now. In the paper itself that you'll see, the process we propose offers anybody deported a way to apply to return. But we do recommend to the administration groups of applicants who should be expedited for review and return. And that includes folks who were deported despite the fact that there is clear legal authority from courts to say that they have an argument and reason to be here in the United States under the law. And so our next speaker, Melissa, is the partner and wife of Knalt Lawrence, who the government deported. They robbed him of the chance to meet his newborn child just 3 months prior to a United States Supreme Court ruling finding that the grounds of his deportation were unlawful. We have photos here of Knalt and Melissa, and we'll be hearing from her by audio. Melissa?
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, so I'm Melissa Lawrence. I come from a small town in Virginia where things used to be pretty normal around, and I started dating Knalt, who's my now husband, in high school. We were a normal couple. We did normal things, but no matter what we did, every time we went out, we were basically harassed by the police due to, I think, just the color of his skin in the town that we lived in. When I was 24, I'm now 34 years old, we got pregnant. We were happy. We were in a really good place. We started saving money. We wanted to buy a house. We wanted to give our child the best life that we could. One day in 2011, I was currently 7 months pregnant. I got a phone call while I was at work from his stepmother saying that immigration had picked him up and he was getting deported. He wasn't getting released. I didn't think that was a real phone call. I thought that there had clearly been a mistake, but it was very real. And from that day forward, my life has never been the same. And I apologize. I'm a little shook up still from hearing Howard's story. That was almost identical to what I'm going through. Knalt was deported for a marijuana charge that he had gotten years earlier. He spent more than a year in ICE detention before his deportation. He was not there for the birth of our child, despite numerous attempts to get him released just for the birth. DHS has refused to reopen his case. They do not contest that Knalt is eligible for cancellation of removal. Meanwhile, I'm continuing to work and raise our son and save money so that we can try and visit him, but it's nearly impossible with things today, how they are. Our son is now 9 years old. Despite being married, I'm sorry, I'm losing my words right now. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit choked up. Connaught wants to be here for his son. He is a very happy person, but the tone of his voice and the sound that I get from him speaking to him is not okay. He's not okay being away from his son, because when he found out that we were having a child, it made him extremely happy to know that he got the chance to be someone great to someone. His father brought him to America and basically abandoned him at the age of 8 or 9 years old. He didn't stick around. He didn't teach him things about immigration or how to live as an immigrant. He didn't prepare him for that. So Connaught grew up trying to be an American who just didn't fit in. And now my son has to suffer from that because he doesn't have a dad, and he doesn't understand why his dad can't go to his games, teach him wrestling, do things. He doesn't understand. So under a more humane system that recognizes the chance to come home, DHS would review Connaught's request and apply the applicable Supreme Court decision and allow him to be reunited with us.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for your words and for your courage in sharing them with all of us in the middle of your workday, and to continue reliving these painful experiences in effort to bring him home. I'm personally grateful, and I know for the folks on the line, it is moving, and I know, at least for me, I'm honored just to be here with you. So thank you so much for sharing that story, and also to you, Howard, since you are here with us on the line as well. I know that we have a lot of attendees right now, and I just, as we close out the presentation part of this, I want to reiterate, the words we've heard today speak for themselves, and they're each unique stories with personal trauma and pain, but they're not exceptions. These 3 folks today and the 10 in our paper are individuals in a group of thousands who have been unjustly deported. The United States government does not need to write new laws or regulations to start a process to review applications of folks who deserve to return home. We encourage all of you to look at the proposal, to share it widely, to uplift the stories of the 10 folks featured in our paper. Lynn, I think, beautifully conveyed the call to action. And so some action items to highlight for all of you. I believe we have a slide with those listed, but next week will be a week of action where we will share out social media posts that you can share with your communities and your organizations, since so many of you have been doing this work for many, many years in the communities where you work. We will have a sign-on letter for advocates who are on the line, for organizations. We want as many organizations to sign as possible so that we can deliver the letter to Secretary Mayorkas with this proposal, asking for a sit-down meeting to talk about a process like this. And we will end our week of action next Friday with a Twitter storm directly to Secretary Mayorkas, echoing the chance to come home and asking folks to share their own stories of folks in their communities who have been deported under prior administrations. So with that, I'm grateful to all of you for joining us, but especially to our speakers today, Howard, Jean, and Melissa. We have time for questions. If folks are willing to put those into the chat, we're happy to answer questions about the proposal itself or about any of the stories shared. Alina, Lynn, myself, and Howard and Melissa are on the line. So I'll pause for a moment. I believe we have one question. Give me one moment and we will. I believe we're going to have some support reading the first question.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be listening. My name is Heidi Altman. I'm at the National Immigrant Justice Center along with Nayna. I just have to take the chance to thank Howard and Melissa and Jean. I think we're all really sitting with their words and their power. So a couple questions I'm gonna facilitate a little bit. One question is just maybe a recap. I think this question goes to Nayna of the criteria outlined in the proposal. So what's the central mechanism, just as a reminder, I think, on humanitarian parole that allows the administration to bring folks listed, described in the report back today? And then what is the proposal moving forward?
Right, so I can start, and then Alina, please feel free to join in. But so the mechanism that Alina mentioned, humanitarian parole, exists under current law, and it gives the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security discretion to bring folks back who have been deported, who received a final removal order, and that can happen immediately. We see this as a critical tool to bring people like Howard, Jean, and Connaught home right now. That's the same tool that we would ask the administration to use through the centralized process that we've proposed in this white paper that we released today. So that proposal is to have the Department of Homeland Security set up an independent office separate from ICE that reports directly to the Secretary to review applications from those who want to return home, rather than folks who want to review their old final removal order, rather than have them go through the immigration court system and make requests of DHS attorneys. Their requests would go directly to this office, which would be empowered not only to review those applications, but to rescind prior final orders of removal and to grant affirmative relief, which includes things like asylum or cancellation of removal, or to terminate cases in their entirety and return people to a lawful status, so that when they're brought back to the United States, they have status and they are not at risk of deportation. An office like this in our proposal would be reviewing each application using a set of factors that we describe that we believe reflect the experience of those who have been deported, as you've heard today. Again, none of the pieces of the proposal make an ask of the administration for new laws or new regulations. It's simply to set up this office and process and to take over the work of reviewing these applications from the courts and ICE, so that it can be streamlined, more efficient, not burden our system, and bring back more people faster. Alina, is there anything else?
I think that proposal is really well laid out. And I would just add, it's important to remember in many of these cases, you think about ICE's role, they're often the prosecutor and the jailer and the deporter, historically have taken a very expansive view of what makes someone deportable, of what they can do. And if you even just listening to the story of Connaught and his family, people don't have the right to an attorney. These things happen very quickly in the most oppressive circumstances. And then if you're lucky, these cases get fought out in court, and maybe one day we'll go to the Supreme Court and a new decision will be issued. But by that time, thousands of people have been deported under the wrong reading of the law, yet there's no centralized office to make sure that those wrongs are corrected. And so this is a very straightforward proposal that is in line with due process principles and would allow some semblance of justice and review and accountability to exist in an agency that does serve a lot of different roles, and where accountability, I think, would be to everyone's benefit. So the proposals, I think, are incredibly well laid out in this report, and we encourage folks to take a look.
Thanks, Alina and Nayna. I'm going to share a question that has come in related to those answers from Suzanne at CQ Roll Call, which is if you can elaborate a little bit on the current process that a person would have to undertake to try to challenge an unjust deportation from abroad and why that's insufficient. And I'll open that to any of the panelists.
I can start us off, and then Lynn and Alina, if you can jump in, that would be great. I think that's an important question, and it is covered in our paper. So, you know, some folks can challenge final removal orders by filing an appeal in federal court. That process is protracted, like most litigation, and really requires counsel. It requires an attorney who's willing to fight and litigate your appeal in a higher court. And victories in those higher courts are rare, frankly, and they require a significant amount of time and advocacy. And we know, right, folks don't have any right to counsel in any part of the system. And I will just add, due to the deference that federal appeal courts give to administrative courts, like the immigration ones, it is rare that decisions made in the administrative immigration court system are overturned. The other option is to file a motion to reopen, which is a procedural tool where a deported individual would ask an immigration judge to reopen a case and review the final removal order. But there are regulations that require this to happen within 90 days of receiving an order. There's a fee involved. Of course, getting that fee, doing that work when you've been deported to a country where you're not safe or one that you don't know is near impossible. There are exceptions to that rule, and those exceptions require the Department of Homeland Security to agree to reopen the case. And what we've seen is that that kind of agreement is rare and very dependent on which local DHS office you're asking. And so even then, when they stipulate, then a judge, you know, would look at the removal order and make a decision from there. And so what our proposal does is it eliminates all of the process in the courts and DHS offices and centralizes it into one office. Lynn or Alina, anything else on just the current system and current process?
Yeah, sorry, my headphones might not be working very well. I hope you can hear me. A lot of the people that I'm working with are trying to find some way to get back. Issa's got, he's married to a U.S. citizen. He has an I-130 application, and he's looking for, he needs to get some waivers approved because he was deported. So there is that process, but there are things that the administration can do to speed it up, to be more generous in saying yes. And then there's also the possibility of using parole to come in. For example, I know people whose children have a disease that can't get treatment in the country where the person was deported to. And that could really, you know, we've been talking a lot about dads and, you know, importance of dads in kids' lives. And when dads want to be there for them, this man wants to be there for his kid. He should be paroled in so that he can be there to help financially and emotionally support his family and his child as he goes through treatment for his it's a chronic and potentially fatal disease. So parole is there, it can be used, but they need to be much more generous about saying yes.
And I'll just add, you know, for the two clients that are profiled of the Immigrant Rights Clinic that are profiled in this paper, Jean Montreville and Claudio Rojas, both were targeted on the basis of their activism. They spoke out, contributed as part of our, you know, very rich immigrant rights movement in this country. That's something that should be celebrated, but instead it was used as a basis to target them. They were able to get legal resources. We have been fighting their cases since their targeting in federal court. The existing mechanisms are set up in a way where ICE has argued that courts don't have the power to intervene, that they don't have the power to actually even review these retaliation cases. And while we think that's wrong, and we've been fighting in court and have had some victories that have recognized the importance of court intervention, it shouldn't require teams of lawyers to come in for an individual case to try and fight for the right to have a day in court on something as basic as the idea that something wrong happened here, that a choice was made to target people for the wrong reasons, a law was improperly applied, a family was unjustly destroyed. These are very straightforward issues that should be able to be dealt with in a much less confrontational way that doesn't require an army of lawyers to argue about obscure jurisdictional provisions in a federal court. So I think we've seen from our experiences that individuals who've had very rich campaigns, the support of governors, the support of members of Congress, the support of courts, even then the current systems are set up in a way where it's stacked against them. And so the point of the centralized office is to really ensure that those barriers aren't needlessly put up, and that decisions can be made in a way that reflects our values.
Thanks so much. Yeah, and of course, I think we heard that echoed in Melissa's testimony as well, right, about the repeated requests to ICE litigation at the federal court level, the support of elected officials, and still can't abroad. So there's a couple questions that I'm excited to see coming into the chat about how to engage, particularly with the NGO sign-on letter that you mentioned, Nayna. So can you just refresh our memory of when and how that will be circulated?
Yes, thank you for that question. Excited to hear folks ready to act. We will be circulating that letter tomorrow morning to every listserv that we know. We will circulate it to those who have attended today. We're asking organizations nationally and internationally to sign on. The broader our sign on, the broader the call. And we will circulate that through next week as we engage in our week of action. And so, you can look for that tomorrow morning. And, it echoes again this call to set up a process to bring folks home and to start doing this right away.
Thanks, Nayna. And a similar question coming in from our friend Laura Rivera, who asks, for those on the call who have either been deported themselves, have a loved one who's been deported, or who are supporting someone in their fight to come home, how to join, how to plug in. And so maybe I'll start by tossing to Lynn, and then anyone else, please join in as well.
Okay, I was hoping to hear from others, but I guess what I can say is, we're using hashtag #ReuniteUS at Ohio Immigrant Alliance. We also have a WhatsApp group where we're organizing people who were deported. So if you know people in that category that want to, be involved in a campaign, you can get them in touch with me. And yeah, let's hear from others though about what they need for support. Oh, I guess I could say one more thing. We need lawyers because these parole applications, it's not rocket science, I don't think, but we need lawyers to work with individuals to get them filed.
Great. And Howard, Melissa, of course, if you have any thoughts, Alina or Nayna, on this question of how to plug in.
No, I just wanted to say thank you guys for all of your hard work and dedication to this.
I just will make one mention since we have Howard on the line from Jamaica, is to say that, there is a lot of work around the country by some fantastic organizations who have been building community amongst US veterans like Howard who have been deported. Just last week, there was a mural project in Washington, DC to lift up their voices and their experiences. There's a report cited in our paper that goes into detail about the experience of United States veterans and how exactly the system falls short in ensuring them status after their service to the country. And so, want to make sure to echo that that work as well, since we do have you on the line, Howard. Is there anything else that you want to add, Howard, today?
Nah, thank you guys. You do a remarkable job, and we're just gonna keep the fight and keep the awareness. Yes, we have other groups that I'm in touch with, like Hector Barraras and those from the Deported House, Veteran Support House. And just thank you guys again, Nayna, Melissa, and of course, Alisa, Uli. Thank you guys so much. And everyone who's on the line, thank you. Just keep on and keep this fight up. Thank you.
I couldn't think really of a better closing, Howard. I think your positive spirit is just another thing to add to the list of things that we admire and are grateful for working with you on. So just echoing to everyone to keep fighting, keep up the work. We will circulate the letter that I mentioned next week. We encourage you to share the proposal and paper and stories of the 10 folks in the paper as widely as possible as we continue to push Secretary Mayorkas to set up a process and start bringing folks home right away. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Lynn, Alina, Jean, and especially Melissa and Howard for being on the line. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Okay.